Okay, so today I'm doing my mega mammoth Movember monthly wrap. Talk about alliteration. But it is going to be a mega mammoth wrap because I read 12 books this month. So we're going to jump right in. We have no time to spare by putting the monthly stats up on the screen in 3, 2, 1, go. For the month of November, I read a total of 12 books comprising of 6 cozy mysteries, 2 classics, 1 thriller, 1 romance, 1 LGBTIQ+, and 1 horror. To my age groups, I read 9 adult books, 2 middle grades, and 1 YA. To my lengths, I read 1 3/4 tome, 5 half tomes, and 5 novellas, totaling 3,294 pages. To my star ratings, I was all over the map. I'm just thankful I didn't have a 1 star, but I had everything else you can think of. So I had 1 5-star, 3 4.5 stars, 2 4 stars, 5 3 stars, and 1 2 star. See, we're all over the map, but why not? This is going to be a pick and mix fun monthly wrap, so we're going to jump right on in. The first book that I read for the month of November was this book, Princess Gambit by C.S. Packard. This is book number 2 in the Captive Prince trilogy, and I gave this book 4 stars. So, the premise, okay, this is a tough one to explain because we need to really talk about the premise of book 1. So, in this series, we are following 2 guys, mainly. We have the perspective of Damon, but we are also following Prince Leron. So, Damon was a prince in another castle, in another kingdom. He was taken hostage and taken to another castle where Leron is the prince, and he was made a pleasure slave for Leron. That happened in book 1. In book 2, we are traveling with Prince Leron and Damon because there is a war. So, with their countries on the brink of war, Damon and Prince Leron must exchange the intrigues of the palace for the sweeping might of the battlefield as they travel to the border to avert a lethal plot. Forced to hide his identity, Damon finds himself increasingly drawn to the dangerous, charismatic Leron. But as the fledgling trust between the 2 men deepens, the truth of secrets from both their pasts is poised to deal them the crowning death blow. Okay, so to my thoughts. It's been 3 years since I read book 1, and I didn't reread it before going into book 2. I remember how it ended, though, well enough, and the full-on scenes of book 1. So yeah, I just want you to know, even though there are 2 men in this series, and even though the premise of book 2 talks about, maybe some love or some lust or something like that between the men, this is not a romance book. Remember, you need to keep in mind that the premise of the series is that Damon was captured and forced to be a pleasure slave for Prince Leron. But Damon carries a massive secret that will impact Leron if Leron is to find out. So he is living with that secret as well. So, book number 1 was incredibly full on, and I was expecting the same from book number 2, but this one was nowhere near as full on. This one, to me, while it's not a romance, it felt more like it was compared to book number 1. I was confused as to why this is considered a fantasy, and then found out it's purely a high fantasy, as it's set in a world that's not our own. There is no magic system to speak of at all, so if you go into this series for the magic system, please know that going in. There is no magic system. It is purely set in a world that's not our own, so it's called a high fantasy, but it might as well be called a male war, war story, I guess. I do love the quote-unquote relationship, so the platonic, even though he's a pleasure slave, the platonic relationship between Damon and Leron, and the ending intrigued me enough to finish off the series. I will be reading the final book soon, and I gave this one 4 stars. So the next book that I read was a standalone, and that was this book, The Couple Next Door by Shari LaPena. So yeah, very interestingly, in my November TBR, I referred to this author as Shari LaPena, but I listened to this book on audiobook and found out her surname is actually pronounced LaPena, so I'm going to call her that for my monthly wrap. So, The next book that I read was The Couple Next Door by Shari LaPena, and this is an adult thriller, and I gave this book 3 stars. Yeah, you'll find out why when I get to the premise. So the premise of this book is that Anne and Marco decide to go to a party next door. Despite the babysitter cancelling, it's okay. They can leave their baby home alone in its crib. It's fine, right? Oh, but would you look at this? They come back home and wow, baby is gone. Who took baby? Why did they take baby? All will be revealed if you can hold out for the answers. And that is definitely my premise and not Shari LaPena's, although it is an accurate representation. Yeah, so Anne and Marco, husband and wife, they're going to a party next door. They have a baby, and so it's a 3-member household. They have contacted a babysitter to look after the baby. The babysitter cancelled. So they decide in their infinite wisdom to still go next door and leave the baby because it's fine to leave the baby home alone. There's a great saying out there, you reap what you sow. I just found this to be ridiculous. Like, the whole premise and points, the whole reason we have a mystery with this book is because this couple decided to leave their child alone at home, this baby. So it's not even a child. They can't fend for themselves. They're a baby home alone. And that's what creates the mystery and the thriller. Really? I'm just not a fan of mysteries or thrillers that become mysteries and thrillers because of, and I really don't like this word, but I have to say it, because of plain old stupidity. Why would you leave a baby at home on its own? It makes no sense. There are multiple reveals in this book, so if you're someone who likes multiple reveals, you may enjoy the book. I thought the first reveal was really good. By the time I got to the rest of the reveals, I was very much over the book. So an average rating. I think it's okay if you can do that whole suspension of belief thing, because honestly, who in their right mind as new parents of a baby would leave it at home? If you can suspend that, you might love the book, because Shari LaPena does seem to be good at what they do when it comes to the thriller and the mystery side of it. But honestly, it was just, I just couldn't suspend my belief of this one. And so therefore I gave it 3 stars. The first reveal was good. The rest I just did not like. The next book that I read was this book, Espresso Shot by Cleo Coyle. This is an adult cozy mystery, and it is book number 7 in the Coffee House Mystery Series, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. So after, in my opinion, the disaster that was The Couple Next Door, it was wonderful to pick this book up. So the premise of this book, so the premise of the series as a whole is that we follow Claire Cosi, who runs a cafe with her ex-husband, and it is owned by her ex-husband's mother. So if that's not compelling enough a reason to read a book, like, can you imagine if you were married? I mean, I haven't been married before personally myself, but trying to imagine if I got married to some guy. I'm gay, but most of you know that. In case you didn't know, you do. If I was to get married to some guy and we get divorced, and then his mother owns a cafe and we work at that cafe together despite being divorced and she owns it, I mean, that would be enough for me to want to read the series anyway, but there is so much more to this series. It is a coffee house mystery series for a reason, because Cleo Coyle, through her protagonist Claire Cosi, discusses so much about coffee. This is coffee palooza to the umpteenth degree. If you love your coffee, even if you don't love mysteries, you will love the series based on the coffee factoids you get pieced and parceled throughout the entire series. It's been amazing. But the premise of this one is that we continue to follow Claire, but this time her ex and father of her child, Matteo, is getting married, and Claire has been hired to create a gourmet coffee dessert bar for the wedding. All seems to be going well, even if the bride-to-be is not a fan of Claire's, to say the least. That is until Claire and Matteo stumble into a surprise bachelor party for Matteo, and a stripper comes out looking exactly like the bride-to-be. This imitation bride-to-be is shot down in cold blood, and the question becomes, were they after the imitation or the real thing? So to my thoughts, oh my goodness, yay, this was amazing. It was amazing to be back in this world. I read book 6 back in February, halting my cozy reads of this series for 8 months. So to be back in this world 8 months later was a true joy. This time, the cozy coffee side focused on espresso, and as with all of Claire Cleo's coffee facts, I delighted in each and every moment. It was great seeing Madame again. For those of you who don't know, Madame is the ex-husband's mother. She is an old biddy, if ever there was one, but an old posh biddy, and I love her to pieces. We need Madame in every book. She is so fantastic. So it was great seeing Madame again. I enjoyed every cozy moment as well as the mystery. I deducted 0.5 stars for the reveal, though. I didn't like the reveal in the last book either, but 0.5 stars is only 0.5 stars. It was still an amazing book, and I can't wait to read book 8, which was the very next book I read. 4.5 stars. So therefore, the next book I did read was this book, Holiday Grind, by Cleo Coyle. This is the 8th book in the Coffee House Mystery series, and once again is a cozy mystery, and I gave this one also 4.5 stars. So the premise of this one is that we continue to follow Claire Cosey, who is looking to create some holiday-themed coffees for the village brew, having planned a tasting party for all the workers to determine a list of what would be best. No one seems in the Christmas mood, so Claire decides to go and find a friend of hers who plays the role of a travelling Santa. However, when she eventually finds him, what she finds is his dead corpse. A new cop in town doesn't seem to buy her theory that this was just a run-by shooting gone wrong, so Claire sets about to solve the case, wanting to put the real killer behind bars. So to my thoughts, I really enjoyed this one. The Christmas theme was so perfect, and I truly enjoyed learning more and more about the endless possibilities of types of coffee that would be perfect for Christmas. I was highly invested in the mystery, because who would want to kill a Santa? I enjoyed seeing Claire sleuthing again, this time accompanied a lot by one of her co-workers, which was a lot of fun. Not to mention the joy Madame gives me any time she's in any scene. We love Madame. The reveal felt a little rushed for me, and I docked 0.5 stars for that, but on the whole, it was an amazing book, and I gave this book 4.5 stars, just like with the one before. And for a sneak preview, I'm going to have the remaining Coffee House series on my SAS list for 2024, so I'm very excited about that. The next book that I read was a standalone called The Distance Between Us by K.C. West. This is a YA romance, male-female romance, and I gave this book 4.5 stars. This is my 4th K.C. West, and arguably one of my absolute favourites. So, the premise of this book is that we follow Cayman, who is a teenager that works with her mother in their doll store. Cayman is not rich, but doesn't mind that at all. After all, she's happy, has a great friend, and she's already graduated in sarcasm. One day, a regular customer comes into the store to advise Cayman that her grandson Alexander will be picking up a special order doll for her. Not too much later, Alexander arrives and Cayman's world is turned upside down. Her father, who is rich, left her mother, and since then her mother believes the rich and the poor do not mix. But Cayman is falling for Alexander. Does she make the logical choice and break it off, or does she follow her heart's desire? So to my thoughts, this was a fantastic book. The ending let me down, but we'll discuss that in a moment. To be honest, I'd call this more of a romantic contemporary, as there were definitely contemporary elements to the book. That said, this was such a fun, easy, enjoyable read. Cayman reminds me a lot of Bay Kenish from Switched at Birth, which actually inspired me to start rewatching Switched at Birth. Great TV show, great deaf representation. Just putting that out there. We'll move back on. Cayman reminds me a lot of Bay Kenish from Switched at Birth. Alexander is the sweetest, kindest rich boy I've ever come across in literature. The romance is adorably sweet. Watching Cayman with Alexander, with her friends, or even working in her mother's store was an absolute delight. Towards the end, we get a reveal of sorts. This was interesting also. Now for my one con, the ending was very sudden, very abrupt. Cayman and Alexander walk into a room to chat with someone, and this chat, by the way, was very integral, and the book ends before they do. It really pulled me out of the world so fast my head spun. I just wish West had added 2 more chapters to the book so that it felt more complete than it did. I'm only deducting 0.5 stars for that abrupt ending though, because everything else was perfect. Truly one of my absolute fave Casey West books I've ever read. 4.5 stars. The next book that I read was this book, Death of a Blueberry Tart by Lee and Hollis. This is book number 12 in the Hayley Powell Food and Cocktail Mystery Series. It is an adult cozy mystery, and I gave this book a total of 4 stars. So, the basic setup for this series as a whole is that we follow Hayley Powell. As I say, this is whatever book number I just said, book number 12. There's so many books in this series. We follow Hayley Powell, who is a columnist. She writes an article or a column for the local paper that they have in the area, where she will talk a little bit about a memory that she has, and then she'll link that to a cocktail recipe and a food recipe, and those articles are dispersed piece and parcel throughout the book. So in the series, she's a single mother, or what she is a very complicated situation. She has 2 kids, and she's great. I love her. She has some great friends that we love as well. Alright, let's keep going. The premise of this particular one, book 12, is that Hayley Powell is now happily married. Before she can set sail on her honeymoon cruise, however, Hayley's mum, Sheila, pays an impromptu visit and promptly becomes the prime suspect in a murder. The victim is Sheila's old high school rival, Kasky Lemon Hodge, known for her homemade blueberry pies and her home-wrecking flirtations. As Hayley teams up with her BFFs Liddy and Mona to clear her mother's name, Sheila reunites with Liddy's mum Celeste and Mona's mum Jane for their own amateur sleuthing. The race is on between the mums and the daughters to find out who served this blueberry tart her just desserts. Okay, so to my thoughts. Well, the premise gives it away anyway, so I might as well say it. In book 11, the prequel to this one, it ends with Hayley not being married. A ceremony started with her to get married, and someone, we don't know who, objected. It is revealed in chapter 1 of this book that someone was Danny, Hayley's ex. This made me very happy. Chapter 1 concludes with Danny and Hayley leaving the church together in love, but then chapter 2's beginning slams that idea as nothing more than that, an idea. In reality, she did marry Bruce, who was her co-worker. I was upset that they were getting married at the end of book 11 because it seemed like a shotgun out of the blue wedding. Hayley deserved more than that. To then see in book 12 that it actually happened and we didn't even get to see them exchange vows annoyed me. Then her mother comes to stay, which she never has in any of the other 11 books, so this seemed very out of the blue also. The mystery didn't intrigue me at all, but the reveal seemed very elevated compared to normal. Most of the 4 stars are owing to the cozy side. I still love Hayley's column and love her friends, and that ending with the reveal was worth 2 whole stars on its own. So a hesitant 4-star rating. I hope the next one is a 5-star book again. A hesitant 4 stars from me. And my friends, we are only halfway, so let's move right along to the 7th book, the next book that I read, which was this book, The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. The edition that I read was part of my Mina Lima collection. I love my Mina Lima books. They cost more, but they are worth it. Okay, so this is a middle grade classic, and I actually disappointingly gave this book 3 stars. So I'm going to explain why. I'm going to try and be brief because I got a whole lot more books to discuss with y'all. So I grew up watching the Disney animated version of The Jungle Book. I love it so much, and I wanted to read the original canonical work of it. What surprises me about this book, and a big part of the reason why I decided to deduct 2 whole stars from it, is that the Disney animated film is Mowgli's story. The Jungle Book, the book, has about 8 chapters in it. I'm just going to confirm that. My apologies. Has 7 chapters in it. They are very long chapters. 3 of those chapters are dedicated to Mowgli's story. The remaining 4 are completely different one-off short stories that don't involve anyone from Mowgli's story at all. And that very much annoyed me. Now, The premise of the Jungle Book Mowgli story is that we follow a boy by the name of Mowgli who was, I don't know, somehow he wound up in a jungle. He was raised by some wolves, and then when he grew up, became a little bit older, he was kicked out of the wolf pack, but was taken on by a bear by the name of Baloo and a panther by the name of Bagheera, who continued to raise him. But there is a big threat to Mowgli's existence, which is Shere Khan the tiger, who wants to kill Mowgli purely and simply because he is a man, and Shere Khan is threatened by men. So Mowgli, Bagheera, Baloo, and a whole host of other animals get involved in a fantastic story. And the 3 chapters of the Jungle Book deserve 5 stars. So that's why I'm giving it 3 stars, because I feel that Mowgli's story was well written. I love the Disney animated classic. I love the original classic as well. Yes, Disney took creative liberties, which we expect. Just one quick thing I'll point out, if you've seen the film but not read the book, the marching elephants in the Disney animated film are not in this book, and Kaa the snake in the Disney film is seen as a villain. Kaa is not a villain in the original book. In fact, Kaa's an ally in the original book. But anyway, yeah, so I enjoyed that. But then I got to the remaining 4 standalone mini-stories. I did not like them. I was disappointed by the fact that we weren't following Mowgli for more than half of the book. And so I took my rating out on that and gave it 3 stars. 5 stars for those 3 chapters that are Mowgli stories, but was very annoyed by the fact that we then stopped Mowgli's story early to get 4 out of the blue, not at all connected to the main stories. 3 stars from me. Oh, and I quickly want to add a bit of disappointment as well. This book is titled The Jungle Book. I have read another book in the Minalima classic series that's called The Little Mermaid and Other Fairy Tales by Hans Christian Andersen. I wish this was called The Jungle Book and Other Stories by Rudyard Kipling, but it's not. It's just called The Jungle Book. So that led to my disappointment as well. If you're going to just call it The Jungle Book and not The Jungle Book and Other Stories, it should just have The Jungle Book in it and not other things. 3 stars from me. The next book that I picked up was a new to me cozy mystery called Bored to Death. This is book number 1 in the Board Game Shop mystery series, and sadly, despite the fact that this is actually a male cozy mystery and only the 2nd series that I've begun in a male cozy mystery, received my lowest rating for the month of 2 stars. I really felt that this was a case of the series title sounds amazing, leading to yet it fails in execution. So the premise of this book is back in his hometown of Sugar House, running his family's board game shop and cafe, Ben just can't seem to get his life to pass go, much less collect $200. At least the town has become more LGBTIQ plus friendly than what Ben was as a teenager, and that flower shop owner Ezra enjoys flirting with him. A local toy and game collector, Clive, tries to sell Ben a rare game, which Ben turns down. Then Clive turns up dead in the dumpster behind Ben's shop, and a backpack full of $100 bills appears on his doorstep. Now Ben is the number 1 suspect in Clive's death, and unless he and Ezra can prove his innocence and find the real killer, he'll go to jail for the murder, and no amount of double dice rolls will set him free. Now, isn't that a fun premise? I don't read premises before going into books. I go into them blind, so I didn't know the premise before I began. All I knew was that it was called a board game shop mystery. I knew from others telling me that this was a male cozy, and that got me excited because I love board games and I love male representation in any series, let alone cozies, which they're not often represented in cozies for the protagonists. And so I was very excited going in. However, trying as the author, which is CJ Connor, did, I really felt that this could have done with several more passes at editing. Not to mention, I was listening to this on audio, and the audio narration seemed very unprofessional. All in all, the book delivers on what it promises, board game shop setting an LGBTIQ plus rep, but that on its own is not what makes a book or a cozy book in my opinion. Sadly, I was very disappointed in this one. I'm not going to promise to read book 2, but we'll see how we go. I've read book 1s in Cozy Series before that disappointed me and then loved the rest of them. So if you end up reading book 2 in this series and you think it's better, please do let me know because I'm open to giving it another go. But this one, it just didn't feel like it was ready to be published yet, despite the fact that it's an absolutely gorgeous cover. And so I'll probably keep the book purely based for the cover. Anyway, 2 stars. It was a disappointing one for me. The next book that I read was this book, Forest, Fishing and Forgery by Tonya Kappas. This is book number 3 in the Campers and Criminals series, an adult cozy mystery series, and I gave this book 3 stars. The premise of this book is that it's Labor Day weekend in Normal. Unfortunately, Daniel Boone National Park is in danger of being closed due to a drought, and local businesses are scrambling for ideas to survive a possible shutdown. A simple walk through the park's trails shouldn't hurt anything, right? But that's when Mae West stumbles across a dead body. Hank, the local detective, and someone who has a massive crush on Mae works a deal with her to allow her to do some sleuthing. He figures she's solved 2 murders already, and it would be better if they work together. However, this sleuthing leads to 2 more deaths, and Mae better work out who the killer is in time before the next death winds up being her own. So to my thoughts, there are many things that went into my rating of 3 stars. Firstly, it's not a horrible book by any means. In saying that, I don't think it was amazing. On the pro side, I enjoyed the side story of Mae's dog being pregnant. I also enjoyed the love triangle, which is something I don't often enjoy. I also love that the series is set in a campground, and I love that each book in the series is a short novella. To the cons, however, I found myself not being interested in the mystery. I found myself very distracted reading the book owing to my lack of interest. Also, the reveal seemed too easily laid out. I prefer for my reveals to feel a bit more amateur sleuth conclusive. This one seemed more like an okay everyone, it was this person reveal, which seemed lacking for me. 3 stars. The next book that I read was this book, Christmas Criminals and Campers, which is book number 4 in that same cozy mystery series, and I gave this book an overwhelming 5 stars, and I headlined my review for this one, and that is how you do it, Tonya Kappas, an overwhelming 5 stars. So yeah, I'd never given a Campers and Criminals book 5 stars before, but this one deserved it. So the premise of this book is that famous author Nadine is coming to stay at Happy Trails, and what a coincidence, the laundry lady has just finished reading one of her books. Nadine would like her camper to look all Christmassy, so Mae sets out to do just that. But then Nadine and her attitude arrives at the camp. One thing leads to another, and Nadine is found dead at the library where she had just done a reading. Standing over her body with a bloody knife is everyone's favourite librarian, Abby, making her the prime suspect. But Mae knows it wasn't her, so it's time to adorn her sleuthing cap once more to determine once and for all who the real killer is. Despite never giving a book in this series 5 stars to this point, this one for me was flawless. From the Christmassy theme, always a plus to my mind, to the setup of really getting to know Nadine before she was killed, to the ladies who laundry, I'm beginning to have a soft spot for Bets, by the way, and of course the gorgeous dog Fifi, nothing went amiss. In this one, Mae's adoptive mother comes down to stay for Christmas. I also love that Tonya Kappas didn't just skim over that whole thing, but rather brought it through amazing character insight and growth to a compelling conclusion. The mystery was enticing too, as I mentioned earlier, we had gotten to know Nadine before she was killed, so I was heavily invested in finding out who killed her and why. I even guessed the killer, which I've only ever done twice before in cozies, but this wasn't because Kappas made it obvious, but because her clues have my brain working overtime, fitting all the pieces together. This book, in a word, was so completely satisfying. 5 stars. The next book that I read was 2389 by Ian Rob Wright. It's an adult horror and I gave it 3 stars. The premise of this book is that Grand Galaxies is the most expensive amusement park ever created, built on the surface of the moon. For a decade now, rich families and honeymooning couples have gone there to have the time of their lives, and no one has ever returned disappointed. But communication with the moon has been lost. Somebody needs to go up there and see what's wrong, so Commander Boss Sharman and his Saba team take flight to see what's wrong, but will they return? To my thoughts, as a fan of the majority of Ian Rob Wright's works I've read so far, this book was less a bad book and more of just a not the book for me. I'm trying to make my way through Ian Rob Wright's books, so don't regret reading it, but I'm not a fan of the zombie thing, and this book takes that idea in a different way, but neither the original nor this is something that interests me. I ended up giving the book 3 stars as I can't take a book that's not for me and give it 1 star purely because I don't like the main theme. It's a good book and I recommend checking it out if you love zombie stuff. 3 stars. And the final book that I read was this book, Stuart Little by E.B. White. This is a middle grade classic and I gave this book also 3 stars. The premise of this book is Stuart Little is no ordinary mouse, born to a family of humans. He lives in New York with his parents, his older brother George, and Snowball the cat. He's an adventurous and heroic little mouse. When his best friend, a beautiful little bird called Margalo, disappears from her nest, Stuart is determined to track her down. He ventures away from home for the very first time in his life and finds himself embroiled in one exciting adventure after another, making new friends and meeting old ones along the way. So to my thoughts, having seen both Stuart Little 1 and 2, the movies, I was eagerly anticipating the canonical work, but having read it now, I feel let down. I realised that the movie, Stuart Little 1, came out more than 50 years after the book was released, but wow did they make changes for the better. I am happy to allow for changes when it comes to adaptations, provided they are minor or don't majorly impact the plot, but this book and both films have a major difference. That being the demeanour of the protagonist. In the films, Stuart Little's MO is to be positive and upbeat, owing to the ways the Littles raised him, but in the books at best he's pompous, and at worst he's downright rude. This definitely impacted my rating, as I don't get how the book became those amazing films. The stories, if you grant the time, published 1945, were good enough to warrant 3 stars, and each chapter seemed to be just that, a mini story. The ending was very sudden, which I also didn't love. I recommend reading the book if it's on your bucket list, but also recommend watching both Stuart Little films 1 and 2 first, as even the opening of this book, chapter 1, actually occurs in film 2 and not the original. Glad I can tick it off the bucket list, but disappointed overall, given how eagerly I was anticipating it, and I gave it 3 stars. And now holding up all 12 books, and we play our favourite game, up. These are all the books that I read in the month of November. What books did you read in the month of November? Let me know in the comment section below, but in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it for this mega November monthly wrap. It was a little longer than normal, but it needed to be because there were so many books. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe and hit the like button. Hit the all button to get all those notifications. We have all the favourites and non-favourites coming up after this video, so stay tuned because they're on the way. But in the meantime, I'm going to let you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone. Merry Christmas.